Are you blessed this morning? All right. Well, let's go to John chapter 12. And we're going to read John chapter 12, 1 through 8 this morning. And I want to tell you that there are a lot of things that we discuss in church that are fun, that are exciting, that are motivating, that make you think you can, take on the day, and it's great. And those are the great days, and those are the things I love to do. I love to see people really get a hold of God's word and really understand what we're talking about. And then there are those days when you talk about the things that maybe aren't as exciting, but they're very important to your personal growth, very important to who you are and who God is in you. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about maybe something that everybody won't find super exciting where they want to jump on their feet and clap their hands, but it is something that will bless you if we put these things into action. And so that's what we're going to discuss today, because if I've told you one time, I've told you 100 times, and I'll tell you a million more. It is very, very important that we don't just say something, but we show it, that we live what we say we live, that we get the whole Bible, because if we're not getting the whole Bible, then we're really not getting the Bible at all. We have to get the good stuff, the bad stuff, the exciting stuff, the boring stuff. We have to get it all so that we have a good understanding of what God's word is saying to us. So today, we're going to get into John chapter 12. We're going to start at verse 1. Are you ready? Thank you, Ashley, for not leaving me there. All right. Verse 1, then 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus, who had been dead, whom he had raised from the dead, there they made him a supper. And Martha served, but Lazarus was one of those who sat at the table with him. Then Mary took a pound of very costly oil of spikenard, anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, who would betray him, said, why was this fragrant oil not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief, and he had the money box, and he used to take what was put into it. So he wasn't interested in the poor, he was interested in him. Verse 7, but Jesus said, let her alone, she has kept for this day. Let her alone, she has kept this for the day of my burial. For the poor you have with you always, but me you do not have with you always. Now I want to discuss a topic today, and we're gonna get into it in just a second, but I want to discuss the struggle of serving. Sometimes it's a struggle to serve, and so that's what we're going to discuss today. Would you pray with me? Father, we ask that you would be with us today, that you would just use me, that you would speak through me, and that we would hear your word today. Pray that you would give clarity and that you would let us understand exactly who you are in our lives and what you're calling us to do. And we give you all honor today. In Jesus' name, amen. I have a video for you. We'll check out this video, and then we'll proceed. The video, to me, when Chastity showed it to me, it very much, so perfectly depicted what I want to get across today. And what was interesting to me when I watched that video is that every time somebody went to do something nice for the next person, they looked at them like there was something wrong with them. Like, why are you being nice? Like the guy who dropped his wallet or whatever it is looked at the girl like she stole his wallet. Like, how did you get this? And like everything that happened, because that's where we live today. We live in a place where nobody serves. Nobody is hospitable to people. Nobody cares for other people. It's more about just what I can do and what you can do for me. And that's kind of the way that the world has become. And what I want to show us today, and what I think that God wants to speak to the church in general, is that we should get back to a place of serving each other. When we serve each other, then we will more willingly be able to serve the people around us at our jobs and at the restaurant or wherever we go, we will be able to serve the people around us. So when you give hospitality is when you live hospitality. You give hospitality when you live hospitality. When you live service. The definition of hospitality is the friendly reception and treatment of guests or strangers. Some people think that hospitality or service is something that you do just when people come over. that you open the door for them, you give them a drink of water, you invite them over for dinner, that you do something nice to them. But hospitality and service is not a here and there thing. It's a complete way of life. It's something that you give to people. It's something that you show to people, and it's a part of who you become. If you're a servant, then you're a servant. Nobody has to tell you to go and do this, do that. You just willingly pick up stuff. For instance, yesterday after the ladies' thing, we were cleaning up, and the lady who spoke, the pastor that spoke, she stayed afterwards, and she had a couple people with her. And she vacuumed the whole place and got in every corner and did all this stuff and just really went, like, she could have left. We were going to clean up anyway, but she stayed to serve and to help clean up. One of the people she was with stayed to serve and help clean up. And one of the people she was with just sat in the corner and played on her phone and did not care to do anything, which is fine. I mean, but that's where she was. And after the thing was over and after it was all done, there was dishes, there was stuff to clean up. And so Trisha decided that she was going to help Chastity and take a bunch of the dishes home and wash them for her. And that is how we serve each other. That is how we serve the church. It wasn't necessarily that there was a big, huge thing and the ladies filled up the Coliseum. But one person serving one person shows love for other people. It shows you the ability to care about other people. It shows you that it's not, we live in a society where people think it's wrong or you're weak or something's negative. If you go and serve somebody, then people look down at you and they say, well, why would you do that? Why would you be so nice? Why would you care? The world is full of mean people. That person was mean to you. Why would you help them? Because it's what you do when you're a servant. You just help people. There's been plenty of people that I've known in my life that I didn't really care. Let me turn off the pastor for just a second and say, there's some people in my life I ain't really always care for. Let me turn it back on. But I know as a Christian, I know as a leader, I know as a pastor that my job is not to do anything but to treat people the way that Jesus would treat them, to love them, to care about them, to serve them, to be there for them. And so that's what I've tried to do, even with some of the more difficult people I've encountered in my life. Not just in church, but just in life. Somebody told me in Orlando, he said, if the pastor of the church, he told me, if you let difficult people control you, then they will always own a piece of you. But if you go out of your way to make things, to serve them and to be good and gracious to them, then they will understand that they no longer control you, but you are doing what you need to do, and you are showing the love of God where they have not shown the love of God. And that's always stuck with me. So there is a very traditional symbol of hospitality throughout the world. Does anybody know what it is? You can shout it if you know it. No? Okay. I'm going to tell you what it is. Ready? It's a pineapple. The pineapple is a traditional. Look, Trisha's like, oh, yeah, I knew that. I knew you did. That's why you subconsciously dressed like a pineapple today, so you could. See, Jerry thought it was the Green Bay Packers. It's not. It's the pineapple. She wanted to make people feel welcome. The pineapple is a traditional symbol of hospitality throughout the world. And the story goes that way back in the early colony days, that the colonists and the sea captains would travel, and they would go down to the Caribbean islands, and they would trade, and they would do all this stuff, and they would be gone for weeks. And when they got back to the colonies, they would get off the ship, and they would unload what they needed to unload. They would take care of the crew, and then they would grab a couple of their pineapples, and they would take them home. When they got the pineapples home and they got to their front step area, what they would do out by the fence is they would take one of the pineapples and they would spear it down on one of the fence posts, and it would stand there as a sign to tell friends and relatives and neighbors and people, well, I'm back from my journey and you're welcome to come over and eat with us and discuss my trip and see what's going on and just have fellowship with one another. The pineapple symbolized being able to go inside to somebody's house and them welcoming you in. Then they would take another pineapple and break it up and serve it to the guests, because they wanted them to know that not only were they glad to be home, but they were glad to serve other people. Sometimes when you get, like I tell Chastity, when we go on vacation, I need to come back like a day or two early, because I need a day to recover. Because how many people know vacations are more stressful than just going to work and living your life? Yeah, they are. I need to go home and get a couple-day vacation from my vacation before I go back to my regular scheduled programming. And so That's what the pineapple symbolized. That's where it came from, was that these sea captains would do this. And as the tradition gained popularity, it was seen more often. Innkeepers would use the pineapple imagery on signs to show people that there was room for them and they were welcome. They would make room for people and they would display it. Woodworkers would put pineapple images in headboards and on bed frames to show people that the house, and when they got home and they were in the comfort of their own bedroom and they could see the pineapple that was welcoming them home. And door knockers were made to look like pineapples, so when somebody came over to your house and they knocked on your door, the first thing they seen was the image of a pineapple that was to these people welcoming them. But today we don't have images of welcoming people. And today, when I was in Orlando, I went around and I knocked on people's door to try to introduce myself. We were doing construction at the church, and I was introducing myself to the neighborhood, and I brought everybody of the immediate neighbors. I had baskets and baskets of cookies, and I brought all them cookies just to say thank you for being patient with us while we're doing this, while the construction's going on. I knocked on one lady's door. She refused to open the door. She was talking to me through this thick door and a screen door outside of it, and she was like, hello? And I said, hey, yeah, I'm Jonathan. I'm one of the pastors across the street, and I just wanted to say that, thank you for being patient with us while we're doing construction, and I have a gift for you. She goes, I can't open the door. And I said, you can't open the door? Why not? She goes, I have to take my cat to an emergency vet appointment. I just called. We got to take her to the vet right now. It's an emergency. And I thought, you could make a better excuse than that, because literally you have to come out the door to get to your car, so you could just take the cookies. But she had a serious cat emergency and had to take the cat to the vet for this emergency surgery. And so people aren't always in today's society ready to be served, let alone ready to serve. They look at people and from very skeptical, and they think, what do you do? Why are you being nice to me? Why are you helping me? Why are you giving this to me? Why are you doing this for me? Are you going to want something from me later? But in many cultures, it has been founded, and they stay rooted in the idea of service to your family members. You know how many people I see that when their mother or father or loved one gets older and they can't take care of themselves, they bring them into their home and they serve them every day. Service to your family members, service to your neighbors, going around and telling somebody, can I help you do anything? Stephanie told us when they first moved into the house, they didn't have a lawnmower, and their neighbor came across the street and cut their grass for them. And so my response, I'm going to be honest, my response wasn't, oh, that was very nice of him. My response was, man, he must have really not liked that you guys weren't doing your job and went over there and did it for you. And he probably was pushing the lawnmower like, I can't believe they're not over here mowing their grass. This is ridiculous. They've lived here for 3 days already. They should have already mowed their grass. But instead, he was just being a nice guy. But the way we look at things is that people just don't care to be nice anymore. They don't care to serve other people anymore. Hospitality and service go hand in hand, and it's always been a sign of respect and honor, done to serve others, not to make yourself look good. It's done to do something for other people. This morning, Trisha came and looked for me. She said she was looking for me everywhere. And I said, okay, well, I've been standing up here. I've been welcoming people. I've been opening the door, and because I feel like somebody should be up there. Somebody should be up there welcoming people and saying hello. And if I can't find somebody to willingly, readily go up there, then I'll do it each week, and I don't have a problem with it. I like people. I'll go up there and talk to people. And so she came up there, and she said, she brought me in here, and the way she's walking me in here, I thought something was wrong. She was like, come on. And I'm like, did the roof fall down? What's going on? And she brought me in here, and she goes, look at GP. Look at Grandma Phyllis. And I said, okay. And she was over here just chatting. She goes, that's the lady that needs to be your people person right there. Look at how good she is. She just goes and talks to people. She's just great with people. That's the lady that needs to be the face of the franchise, so to speak, to say, this is the person who is welcoming, who smiles, who does all this, who says, hey, come on in and let me help you. Let me find you a seat. Let me do, like I don't know what they were talking about, but she was fully engaged. She was fully engaged in having a full conversation, and Trisha thought that was so cool that she wanted to come find me, and apparently searched everywhere except for up front until the very end, but she brought me in to show me that, and it's very cool. That's what service is, something so small. See, GP didn't even know she was going to be a part of the message today. The things that happen. Go, girl. So, a lot of times when people say hospitality, one of the things, there's a certain phrase that people think of. They think of Southern hospitality. And so from being from down south, I can say that there are times when Southern hospitality is accurate, and there are times when people in the South just don't even care to even say hello to you. And so it just depends on where you're at. Friendly people, considerate, welcoming, helpful. That's what people think of. That's what I think of when someone says Southern hospitality. And we have seen that in our life growing up in Florida, and especially when we were in Orlando. Let me tell you, some of the most serving, hospitable people you will ever meet is Caribbean people. People who come from Jamaica or those islands in the Caribbean. Those people are the most caring, considerate, serving people that I have ever seen. We got invited to several cookouts at these Jamaican folks' house, and we would go over there every time, primarily because it was fun to hang out with them, secondarily because they cook really good food, and if they got really good food, I'm there. And so I was there, but what I noticed is that the mother of the family, she was an older woman, and she would sit there and she would spend all day cooking. And she would cook. I mean, it was so good. She would cook and cook and cook. She'd put it down, and the minute she stopped cooking, she did nothing else the rest of the night. The older people in the house did nothing else the rest of the night. The children, no matter how grown they were, no matter how old they were, they went over to their mother and they said, "Can I serve you? What do you want to eat?" They made their plates. They got their drinks. They pulled out the chair for them. They made sure that their parent, their uncle, their aunt, whoever, they made sure they had everything they needed. They would come around like waiters at a restaurant, and in the middle of eating, they would say, "Do you need more water? Do you need some salt? Do you need anything?" And they made sure that no matter what happened, the older people were being cared for. They were being watched out for. They were making sure that they had respect for the people that came before them. Not only did they do it for them, but they did it for guests. They would come to us and they would say, "Can I get you something? Do you need to know where this is? Do you need help carrying something?" And they made sure no matter what happened that everybody felt like they were respected, and everybody felt like they were cared for, and everybody felt like they were being served well. I've been served better at those little get-togethers than I have been at real expensive restaurants, because the culture says we're going to serve no matter what. Our culture says serving is done. We don't serve no more. You get what you can, you take what you can, you do what you can, and that's it. You don't give nothing to nobody, you don't help nobody, you don't hold the door for nobody. I try to make sure that everywhere we go, not only do we try to serve and hold the door for people and try to do things, I try to make sure the kids do it. We went to the mall not too long ago, and Jaden, I think it was holding the door, and he got like 47 people that came through that door at one time. Like, he was stuck there. We was already halfway to the car before we realized Jaden was still stuck at the door, and he's just holding it. He's not thinking nothing of it. He's like, "Come on out." 10 years old, come on out. 10 years old and has grasped the idea of service better than people who have been living for 50, 60, 70 years, because we have taught him, not that we're great teachers, but we try to display to him the biblical definition of what it means to serve someone. To serve someone the way Jesus served someone. To love someone the way Jesus loved them. It means you don't have to know them. You don't have to really even like them to serve them, to care for them, and to love them. I could care for you, I could serve you, I can show you the love of God, and then when you leave and I leave, I don't have to talk to you no more after that. But when you're here, it is my business to make sure that I treat you the way that Jesus would treat you. And that goes far beyond just the church. My children, one of them is in here, and then a half of one who's for the next month or so, he's my child too. And any kids that come over to my house and are under my care, they become my children for the night, whether it's 24 hours or a week or however long it is, they become mine, and I do what I need to do. I teach them to be respectful. I teach them to make sure they're caring for people, and I teach them to do anything that they need to do to make sure people know that they are respected, that they are loved, that they are served. If my child ever tries to even form his mouth like he's going to say something disrespectful to his mother, I'm right there to put the mighty hand of the Lord's correction. Now, I know in 2019 you shouldn't say stuff like that, But like I said before, we from down south, and we can still whip our kids down south. So we just brought that custom right up here. Okay, we grandfathered it in. And so if they need one, they get one, which they don't need them no more because they got them when they were younger. But I will. See, he's been here for a month, and he already knows the drill. I went there to wake him up this morning. He goes, "Can I have 5 more minutes?" I said, "What's 5 minutes going to do for you? You ain't even going to fall asleep in 5 minutes." I was wrong. He fell right back asleep. He fell right back asleep. Yep. He looked at me, too. I should have known when he looked at me and went, "Please. 5 minutes? I will have been sleeping for 4.5 by the time you come back." But that's what service is, and that's what we try to teach the children. We try to teach the people. We try to teach, ministry that we've been at. We try to teach people about serving, because serving is more than just opening the door for somebody. Serving is letting somebody know that you're there for them, that you care about them. Serving is when somebody comes to you and they have a problem and they need some help, they need some assistance. You're there to be with them, to encourage them, to cry with them, to have fun with them, to smile with them, whatever they need. You're there to do that, and that is serving. And that is the kind of godly serving that we want to promote, is service with a smile. Serving because you know it's what God wants you to do. Serving because it's what Jesus did to us. It's what Jesus did to us. Jesus said, "I did not come to serve or to be served, but to serve." And yet here we see Jesus sitting back. We see Jesus eating dinner. And we see Jesus being served. We have come into a time in our society where serving others or being friendly somehow is taken as inappropriate. Whenever we go to a restaurant, I'll talk to the people, and I'm friendly, and I'm doing all this. And I remember we were in Texas. We lived in Texas, and my brother came to visit. Tim came to visit, and we decided to go. We lived right on the Louisiana-Texas border, all the way down by the Gulf. So it was all the way in the farthest corner of the bottom of Texas that you could get to. And so we decided to go and find Tim some good crawfish because he wanted to try some crawfish. So we're like, well, I'm going to tell you what. We're this close to Louisiana. We're just going to go right on into Louisiana. We're going to get you some good crawfish. So we went about an hour into Louisiana to Lake Charles, Louisiana. And we drove around, and we was looking for all these good crawfish spots. Let me tell you where we ended up. Texas Roadhouse. We went to Louisiana to go to Texas Roadhouse. There was not one piece of crawfish in that restaurant, but we got sick of looking. And so we did that, and I was there talking to the waitress and doing what I do and being friendly and stuff, because sometimes, they'll give you free stuff. Like, I'm not going to lie about it. Sometimes I've gotten some free Oreo cookies and some, like one lady, she was like, "I can't give you a dessert, but I got a pack of Oreos in the back. I'll come bring you some Oreos." I was like, "I like where your head is at." And so she hooked me up with some Oreos. But I'm sitting there talking to the lady, and then I don't remember her name at this point. It's been 11 years ago. But I turned around to say something to Chastity, and I called Chastity the waitress's name. and Tim goes, and he goes, like, he looked at Chastity like, "You're not going to do nothing about that? He just called you this other lady's name, and you're not going to correct that?" The same thing with the youth pastor in Florida where we were at. He would go and he would be the same way as me. He would go and talk to people, and he told me one day, he was like, "People think it's flirting, but it's not flirting. It's just being polite and being courteous and helping people." And so I try to be friendly because I want people to understand, and I want people to know that everybody's not out to get them. Especially in that kind of industry where you're serving people. We went to Cheddar's here in Fort Wayne, and there was some people that were just complaining to complain. There was nothing wrong with their food. They ate all of it. They were fine. They were having conversation. They went to leave, and the lady was like, "I don't like this. My daughter didn't like this. My husband did. We need to speak to a manager." The manager came over, and the food was gone. So like, "Well, why'd you eat the food if it was bad?" "Well, we were just so hungry. We couldn't wait for it to go back and happen." And so they ended up giving them like half their food for free. And then the waitress was crying. And so she came over. I said, "Can I speak to the manager?" And she was our same waitress. And she came over, and I said, can you get me the same manager that talked to them? And I said, "Yeah." Or she said, "Yeah." And she brought the manager back. And I said, "I just want you to know that waitress did a great job for them. That there was nothing wrong with their food. They ate it all, and they didn't complain one bit until the check showed up. She did a great job. She served them as best as she could. There was no problem with them until they got their check." And so I want you to know that no matter what them people said, she is a good waitress. She's been great to us. She's been great to every other table that I've seen her at, and she was great to them. They just wanted to get out of paying for stuff. And he said, thank you very much. And then the waitress came over, and they didn't even give her a tip. They gave her nothing. So we gave her extra to cover for them, and she said, why would you do that? And I said, because it's not right for people to treat you that way. And she said, yeah, but you didn't do it. You don't have to cover up for them. I said, I'm not covering up for them. I'm treating you the way you should be treated. And because they didn't do it, it doesn't change that I should do it. We walk around and we look at the way other people treat people, and we think, well, if they're going to treat you bad, I should treat you bad. If they don't like you, I shouldn't like you. If they don't want to serve, then I shouldn't serve. Wrong. Sometimes we have to stand up and be the example and show people Jesus when nobody else is showing them. Show people love when they haven't seen it. Show people service when nobody serves them. Show people what God has called us to show them. That's what we're here to do, to make a difference in the world. Now, Jesus has gone to Bethany to see his friends. You remember Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. We just talked about them a few weeks ago. Lazarus died. And now Jesus comes over there and has this whole experience where he raises Lazarus. And now many people think, many Bible scholars and religious teachers think that this dinner that they're having now is a result of what Jesus did for Lazarus. They're throwing him a thank you dinner. And they're in there, and the Bible says that Jesus is sitting down, and Lazarus is sitting down, and the disciples are sitting down, and everybody's having dinner. And Martha is working. Martha is working and working and working and working. But let me tell you what time this is. This is 6 days before Passover. 6 days before the Last Supper, 6 days before the crucifixion. This is the last week of Jesus' life, and he has so much on his mind. Obviously, when he gets to the Garden of Gethsemane, he is so worried about what's going on that the sweat becomes like drops of blood. He cries out to God and says, if there's any other way, let this cup pass from me. He doesn't want to be in this situation, but he is. And even faced with the hardest struggle of his 33-year life, he looks at them and he says, okay, I'll show up to dinner. He's serving them without them even knowing it. He's serving them just by being there. The last week of ministry, the last week of love, the last week of teaching and of serving, Jesus demonstrates being an ultimate servant throughout his ministry. And now he's serving while he's relaxing. Jesus showed up. He put the desires of the family before the despair in his heart. You know, sometimes service helps eliminate sadness, pain, and fear. When you start helping other people, you start to realize that maybe the situation you're in isn't that bad after all. When you start seeing people smile because you did something as simple as bring them a glass of water or open the door for them at the store, and then you think something so small could brighten somebody's day. Sometimes it helps. Verse 2 shows this to be true as John records that they made him a supper. They made him a supper. Because customarily it would have been the woman's job to cook and to serve, and it would have been the men's job to sit down and have fellowship. You don't have to like it, but that was the customary way that they did things. And so they, being Mary and Martha, they would have made the dinner. They were responsible for serving. They were responsible for the people. They were responsible for hospitality. But Martha was doing it herself. And I can imagine Martha didn't like that too much. This shows the very importance of hospitality and the very importance of serving. Hospitality welcomes the presence of God. Service allows the worship of God. Let's take it into where we are right now, church. Hospitality welcomes the presence of God. When they prayed, I couldn't be there this morning. I was talking to somebody, but when they pray, we try to pray every morning, and sometimes it's right at the last second, and we get a small prayer out there, but we want to dedicate this service to God. And when we pray, we ask that God would fill the place with his presence, that he would move, that he would do what he needs to do. And that starts at the very beginning when somebody opens the door and says, welcome to church. When somebody opens the door and says, I'm glad you're here. When somebody smiles at somebody, the hospitality starts the service. Because people will make up their mind about where they are and who they're with in the first 5 minutes of being there. And if all people see is angry faces and yelling and bickering and this and that, and I don't know where the bathroom is, and I can't understand anything, and there's kids running up and down everywhere, and all chaos is breaking loose, people are thinking. But when we have somebody who can say, welcome, I'm not going to try to make it weird, but I'm going to make it weird because it's just what I do. My man Curtis right here, don't look at him because I don't want him to be, weirded out by everybody's attention. Guests don't like that. guests don't like that. But I said, good morning. And he said, good morning. And I said, welcome to church. He said, welcome, or not welcome because I was already here. He said, thank you. And I talked to him for a couple seconds. I said, well, how did you hear? Because, I seen him come in. I seen you come in. I was watching you because I was standing at the door. And I seen him come in, and he drove past from this way. And he looked up at the sign, and I don't know, I thought maybe there was somebody standing up there doing something foolish because he went like this. He went, and turned and went into the thing. And I was like, man, he is really, something's going on. And then he got out, and he came in, and he brought his Bible with him. And I was like, oh, he's coming to church. He has his Bible in his hand. And so he came in, and I said, how did you hear about the church? And he actually said it was Sean's wife told him about the church. Dr. Lori, that's what I like to call her, because we're friends like that. But my goal in this whole thing was just to make him feel welcome. Did you feel welcome? Okay, he felt welcome. And this is the gentleman that GP was talking to. When Trisha searched and scoured the whole building looking for me with the severity in her eyes and in her walk that something was just going desperately wrong, and I get in and something's going good. And she's like, look. And I was like, cool. That's what service is. It allows Curtis to come into the presence of God. It allows Curtis to come in and experience worship. And then when Kristen and Trisha and Chastity, we don't pay them. We don't pay anybody here. We don't pay them. But they come in early every Sunday. Ely, Jerry, they come in early. Tim, Dustin, the board members, Sean, everybody who does anything here. Pastor Josh and Stephanie, anybody, Ashley. Ashley goes back there every so often. I don't know how their schedule is, but she goes back there and teaches the kids every so often. And you know why Ashley does that? Ashley does that so that parents can come in here. She makes a way for the presence of God to come into somebody's life. Serving allows worship. Because it's going to be a lot easier for us to worship with somebody in the nursery or with somebody in the kids' church taking care of that stuff. So now Ashley can come in here and she can worship because she brought her kids today. And her kids have something to do because of serving, because of volunteers. And that's what's happening in this place, in this story. They are serving Jesus and the disciples. They are volunteering their time and their effort, and it allowed Jesus to come in and allowed for the presence of God to be there. Okay? That's what church is. It's a place to worship. Serving is always about others. During the American Revolution, I'm trying to hurry up. I'm going. During the American Revolution, a man in civilian clothes rode past a group of soldiers that were working. They were trying to rebuild a small defense barrier. And he noticed that the leader was standing there and telling him what to do, but not helping him. And the soldiers were tired, and they were struggling to get done with this. And they just wanted to sit down, and the leader that they were under would not let them. And they were being worked to death. And the civilian that rode past on the horse, he looked down and he said, not that. He said, why can't you help these men? And he looked at him with dignity in his voice and in his face and straightened his clothes, and he said, sir, I am a corporal. I am not getting in that ditch and helping them. And so the man got off the horse and he went over there and he helped these guys get done because he could see they were physically exhausted. And at the end, after they got the job complete, he went back over to the corporal and he said, sir, Mr. Corporal, if you ever need something like this again, if you have this need and don't have the servants, call your commander-in-chief and I will come back and help you get it done. The man that got off the horse to help him was President George Washington. But we get to a place where we feel like we are way too important to help people. We are way too important to serve. You know, people have said to me, because I'll introduce myself like I did this morning to Curtis. I say, I'm Jonathan. And people will come in, and after church, they'll be like, I had no idea that you was the pastor because you just said you're Jonathan, and you just look kind of normal. So I didn't know. I just assumed that you were just Jonathan. I don't need you to run around and say this, that, and I don't have to introduce myself by the title that I have. I don't have to introduce myself because at the end of the day, I'm just a servant of God just like you are. And I'm here to serve you guys, and I'm here to love you guys, and that's what I do on Sundays. And I know that this might not be the most dynamic, exciting thing you've ever heard, but the important thing is this: if we're not growing in every single aspect of our walk with God, then we're not growing. We have to grow equally. We have to grow. When we serve, we allow people to get what they need. And that's what happens in our life. We have a lot on our minds. We all have so much going on. Surely Jesus understands that I'm too busy to consider serving right now. Maybe that's true, or maybe it's not. Maybe God just wants you to come to him with the faith and understand and believe that if you come to him and you serve him, he's going to pour what you do, your faithfulness, back into your life. That's what we have here. Kristen told me last week, I think it was, I'm just calling everybody out today. I got no respect for anybody today, I guess. She said last week, she said her fiance hasn't, you know, she's been inviting him to come, and you know, he works a lot and there's whatever, so he hasn't been around, you know, to come. And so she texted him a picture of the drums, and she texted him a picture of the piano, and I don't know what else she texted him. She's like, they need a drummer. They need a keyboard player. And so, you know, she's just trying to do what she's trying to do, but the way she's trying to entice somebody is by serving. Because the root of every person is service. Every person, whether you accept it, believe it, like it, or don't like it, is service. A mother will get up every morning and serve her children because that's what she's made to be. A husband, if he's doing his job right, will get up and serve his wife. You know, if you're getting up and you're demanding that the wife serve you, then you're not necessarily doing your job right. Now, in my house, we both just utilize the children, and we have them serve both of us because we're really trying to teach them the idea of service, okay? We're really trying to explain to them. And the way that Cameron's looking at Ashley right now, I think he understands the struggle. We're just trying to show them service, you know, teach them. But some people call it lazy, but they're just rude. There's no way we can have any more on our minds than Jesus had on this day. And I can imagine that Martha is yelling at Mary to help. And I can imagine that Mary is crying out in worship at Jesus' feet, and the disciples are calling her wasteful. And to top it all off, Jesus finds that this is his last week on earth, and he knows that. There was a man named Claude Monet who was a French Impressionist painter. And him and other Impressionist painters, when they were met with resistance when they started coming up with this new idea of painting. And it's so many small parts up close that when you get up close to it, all the little dots and all the little pieces just look like a bunch of chaos. It just looks like a cluttered mess. But when you stand back and you see the whole picture, you can see the design that the artist had in mind when he painted it. And that's what's happening here. All this stuff looks like chaos, but there is a design that if we just step back and we look at it, we can see exactly what God meant to show us in this picture. It's not just chaos. It's not just Mary worshiping. It's not just Judas yelling. It's not just Martha running. It's not just Jesus sitting. It is a picture of service at its greatest. And that is what we're looking at today. Martha shows the need for people who are willing to serve when no one else is. Mary shows the importance that no matter what, worship has to happen. And Judas shows the people who are interested only in what benefits them. Each of these people are almost always together. I bet you if we did a poll, each of them are here today. There's the worker, there's the worshiper, and there's the whiner. They're all here somewhere. Many times God will use the chaos in your life to reveal the details of the creation inside of you. So in this passage, Jesus gives us 4 distinct types of service, and we're done. And that's what we're going to look at. The first distinct type of service that he shows us is unrestricted. Unrestricted service. They made him a supper, and Martha served. Unrestricted service does not change when other people won't help. Unrestricted service. Martha knew that what she needed to do, whether people were going to participate or not. It was her unrestricted service that allowed Mary the opportunity to go into the presence of Jesus. It's unrestricted. It's Pastor Josh in the back right now teaching the kids that allow the parents to be in here. Unrestricted service allows you access to the presence of Jesus. When people are in the nursery, it allows parents access to the presence of Jesus. When, like I said before, when the singers are up here, it allows us access to the presence of Jesus. Unrestricted service says no matter what happens, I'm going to do it anyway. A man named David Augsburger tells the story of General William Booth, who was the founder of the Salvation Army and who had lost his eyesight. His son Bramwell was given the difficult task of telling his father that he would never have his sight again. There was no recovery. And the general asked, "Do you mean that I am blind?" And he said, "I hear that we must contemplate that." And the father continued and he said, "I shall never see your face again?" And the son said, "No, probably not in this world." And General Booth answered the news with this statement. He said, "I have done what I could for God and his people with my eyes. Now I shall do what I can for God without my eyes." Unrestricted service says no matter what stands in my way, I'm going to complete the job. No matter what I'm going through, I'm going to get this done. We can't get to the place where we allow circumstances to limit our service. I read this the other day, and I thought about it this morning, especially when it was raining when I left church. And there's people that, obviously always, there's people that aren't here, and I thought about this statement. It said it takes 90 gallons of water to baptize a Christian and 9 drops of rain to keep them away from church. Or a nice sunny day. Or anything. People don't need reasons anymore. But restricted commitment will always restrict your connection to Jesus. The second distinct type of service he shows is unsolicited service. In verse 3, he says, Mary took a pound of very costly oil and anointed Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. Now, what you have to understand is that nobody asked her to do this. This was her form of worship. So when you come in and you sit in church and you see the person in front of you and they got their hands in the air and they're singing at the top of their lungs or they're doing what they got to do, that is their unsolicited worship to God. Nobody asked them to do that. Nobody asked them to worship in that way. They just knew that God has been so good to them that they are going to give him every last bit of worship that they have. And you might think it doesn't take all that to serve God. They're just showing off. They're just doing all this extra so that they can be seen. No, you don't know what that person has walked through in order to be in that space today. You don't know the week that person has had, that they just want to get into the presence of God, and without being told to and without being commanded to, they just want to lift up their arms and say, God, it is you and you alone that has gotten me through this week, and today I am going to serve you with my life, with my worship, and with everything that I am. Unsolicited service. Now she is kneeling at the feet of Jesus and crying out to him. She gave all she had. Sometimes you have given all you've had this week at work, this week with your children, this week in your marriage. You have given all you have, and you just want to come worship. You just need Jesus to show you something new. You just need to be in the presence of God. She gave humility. She was at his feet. That's what service does. It allows worship. The verse ends with this detail. This is my favorite part of this, okay? Understand we're talking about service. Understand we're talking about how God creates ways for us to serve him. And my favorite detail of this is that the house was filled with the fragrance of the oil. The house was filled with worship. That's what we search for. That's what we serve for. I want to see the house of God filled with the fragrance of worship. That when people walk through that door, they come in late, they walk through that door, and they understand that the presence of God is in here. We've had other people come, and not even at a church service, and both here and in the first place we were at, and they come and they say, I can just feel that the presence of God lives in this room. And we were eating pizza and hanging out with other people, or just having a meeting or doing something, and they would say they could. That's what we search for. That's what we serve for, to try to show people that the presence of God is welcome. Service allows for the entire place to be filled with God's presence. Number 3, uncommon service. Verse 4 and 5 is uncommon service. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who would betray him, said, why wasn't this oil sold and given to the poor? What Mary was doing was crazy. It was uncommon. It was uncommon for her to even not be serving. It was uncommon for her to even be standing in that room with these men and not have a plate in her hand or not being serving some kind of way. It was uncommon in every way. And Judas looked at her and said, this is ridiculous. There's always somebody who wants to get mad at somebody else's worship. There's always somebody who doesn't like what people are doing. There's always somebody. But service allows worship. Maybe on your way to church today, that somebody was the guy in front of you who cut you off and then honked at you and gave you the finger like you did something wrong. He was trying to stand in the way of your worship. Maybe Tim, don't shh. I don't even know what he said, but I heard him say something, and I'm sure it was pleasant. Some people will always see uncommon service as a waste of potential, a waste of resources, and a waste of time. But uncommon service is how we see an uncommon God. That's what I desire to see, is an uncommon move of God. It's uncommon to today. God isn't moving the way he did before. Because nobody's looking for an uncommon God to come and mess their service up. I want God to come in here and mess things up so much that all we can do is cry out to him and say, God, you do what you want to do. We are here to serve you and only you. Uncommon service. The last one is unequal service. Unequal service. He said this not because he cared for the poor, but because he controlled the money box and he was a thief. He was concerned with the work, not the worship. He was concerned with the worth of what she wasted. Unequal worship is seen as waste by people who don't understand it. When you get down, one of my favorite things about church, about this church, about being in church with Jerry, okay? Look, he just went. One of my favorite things about being in church with Jerry is that no matter where you are in the building, you can hear Jerry worship. He's not quiet about it. He's not shy about it. He's back there standing up maybe, hands hitting the ceiling, whatever, shouting at the top of his lungs. Unequal worship. Doesn't care who's around, doesn't care who's listening. That's worship. We sit over here and try to be dignified and look good and be like, oh, yes, I'm not going to sing too loud because I'm a horrible singer. We all need to be a little more like Jerry, I think. Let me not speak for everybody. I need to be more like Jerry. I need to give God the unequal worship that he deserves. Because what he gave me was unequal to anything else that anyone else could give me. He did what no one else could do. And Judas didn't understand this because he didn't want to understand this. The service in this passage is unequal to anything else. People give Martha a hard time. She's just being selfish. In reality, I don't think that was the case. I think Martha knew what Mary needed, and she served so that Mary could get what she needed. Martha wasn't getting mad. Martha wanted her to serve. She wanted her to worship. Martha was willing to do everything so Mary could get in the presence of Jesus. And we're not willing to wake up in the morning. I told somebody asked me at school, what time does church start? And that person is not here, which means I can ridicule them tomorrow at school. I said 10 o'clock, but I had my back turned to her. And apparently she thought I said 7 o'clock, and she goes, 7 o'clock? No, 10 o'clock. But what if it was 7? If it was 7, would that hinder our service? What if it was? What if the church got so big that we had to have 3 services, one at 8:30, one at 10:30, and one at, 11:30, 12:30, whatever, I don't know. That means the people like Kristen and Trisha and Chastity and me and the people, Ely and Jerry, and the people who are a part of this service taking place would have to be here at 7:30. Trisha's already exempting herself. She's like, nope, not me. But listen, is there any service that we can give to God that is equal to what he's given to us? If I have to come at 5:30, 4:30, I'll do it. And I know that most people would. Most people who really understand what Jesus did, they wouldn't have a problem with giving him unequal service. Now, I'm going to close with this, and we're done. This was not the first time that Jesus spoke about the importance of service. He did it throughout his ministry. It's not the first time that he demonstrated service, and it's not the last time. The very next chapter in John 13, we see Jesus serving again. It's even closer to his death. And it's unequal service, and it's unsolicited service, and it's just crazy service. Jesus is sitting at the room with all the people at the table eating dinner. And then Jesus gets up. Where's my little? Jesus gets up and takes his towel, puts it in his waist, and then he starts walking over to the disciples. Now you have to understand that they walked everywhere they went. So their feet were not handsome. They did not have nice manicured, pedicured toes and whatever. They had feet, Flintstone feet. And Jesus got down no matter what, because Jesus is not afraid of the things that we have going on in our life. And he got down, and he tucked his little towel, and he got down, and he put himself below the other people. And he bent down in complete humility and took the lowest job that he could take in that minute. And he poured the water on their feet. And he washed them. One by one, he humbled himself to the point of a servant and washed the feet. Even Judas, the same Judas who was about to go run and get the authorities. The same Judas who was not there for any good reason. The same thief and liar and betrayer. Jesus got down and washed his feet and dried his feet. He came to Peter, and Peter said, you going to wash my feet? And Jesus said, yeah. Peter said, no, I can't have that. You can't wash my feet. I should be washing your feet. You can't wash my feet. And Jesus said, if I can't wash your feet, then you have no part of me. And Peter said, well, in that case, wash my head and my hands and everything. Just give me a total bath in here, Lord. And I think about that, and I think, wash my head. Wash my thoughts. Keep me pure in my mind. Let me forgive. Forgiveness is service. Keep me pure in my mind. Wash my hands. The work that I do, make sure that that's clean. Wash my feet. The places I go. Don't let me walk into places where I shouldn't be and touch things I shouldn't touch and think things I shouldn't think. Keep me clean, Jesus. And Jesus walked one by one to every person and washed their feet. Jesus said those who are already bathed don't need a bath. They just need their feet washed. Because what Jesus is trying to show people is that service is not just limited to servants, but that servants are always expected to serve. The same Jesus didn't stop his service here, right? He was arrested. We're shutting it down. We're bringing this thing in for a landing. This is my second closing for those of you who have ADHD. Just pay attention. He walked out. Judas came and had him arrested. He's beaten. He's hurt. One of the Gospels tells how Peter cut the ear off of Malchus, the guard that came out. Jesus picked his ear up, served him, put it right back on his head. Service continues even for the people that are beating him. He served them. He went into the temple courtyard. He was accused. He was tried. He was beat. He was whipped. He took a beating that no other person would have survived. Most people say that he would have died on the whipping post had he not been Jesus, the Son of God. And then not only did he get up from there, he had to carry his own cross, serving us every step of the way. Every step he took with that cross on his back was service. He said, this step is for Dustin, because I know that Dustin has a good heart. And this step right here, this step is for Phyllis. This is for Grandma Phyllis, this step. And this step right here is for Curtis. And every step, this step is for Cameron. This step is for Isaiah. This step is for Isaiah's children. This step is for Isaiah's grandchildren. This step is for every person in humanity that I can serve. Oh, but this step, this is the step for the people who won't accept me. I'm still serving them. This is the step for the people who abuse me and ignore me. I'm still serving them. This is for the step for the people who don't believe I'm real. I'm still serving them. This is the step for the people who are sick and broken. This is the step for the people who need me and don't know it. Every step that Jesus took up that hill was service. And we get together in church and we think, okay, this is fun, this is cool, nice sermon, nice music, lovely to see you, I'm out, see you next week. Jesus took every step with you in mind. Every step with me in mind. Because he knew what had to happen. So I understand that this might not have been the most dynamic. Come back next week. We're going to start the fake news thing, and we'll get all into fun stuff. But it's important to know why we serve. We don't serve because it looks good. When somebody comes in and they say, oh, Dustin, you go to that church? Oh, yeah, not only do I go, I'll tell you what I do. I'm a board member, okay? Decision maker up in here. I'm an important guy, okay? Tricia, you go to church over there? I don't just go. I sing. I mean, I'm a part of the ministry team. I'm a leader. Kristen, you go over there? No, I don't just go. Service is not just so we look good. It's not even remotely about looking good. Service is about giving back to the God that's already gave you everything. Service is about making it possible for Ashley, for Curtis, for Sheila, for Kristen, for me, for Jerry, Ely, Chastity, for the people that are here, the people that aren't here. Service makes it possible for them, for us, to get into the presence of God. That's the importance of service. And it doesn't just change because you don't like it. That's what Jesus is teaching. He's teaching us the struggle of service. It's commanded to serve. Go into all the world and make disciples. That's service. How you make disciples, how you go into the world is different person to person. But the idea is given to everybody. Service. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for this day. I thank you for letting me understand the importance of serving you. That it's not about position or platform. It's not about any of that. It's about giving what I have, giving what you've given me back to you. That you can use somebody like me is just a miracle. Somebody who's been broken and been hurt. Somebody who's been made to feel worthless, and somebody who's just halfway given up on life most of the time. God, the fact that you put me where you put me and you allow me not only to serve you but to serve people is crazy to me. So God, I pray that as we close this service that you would let us feel in our heart and hear with your ears and see with your eyes the benefit of serving.